So yes, as Adrienne said, I am Breanne Casteel. First and foremost, I do want to put in, yes, I am in Iowa right now traveling. I am from Montana. All of my pictures in this slide, I do hope you enjoy. They are from Glacier National Park, one of my very favorite places to go and frequent up in Montana. So I am sure everyone's going to love the content, hopefully. But if you don't, at least I hope you enjoy the pictures of Glacier National Park. So I came up through the computer science world. I know a lot of business analysts come out, business analysts from different scopes, different areas. I came up through tech, which I really enjoy for the business analysis that I've done, because then I got used to speaking with engineers, with developers, because I was one. I was a coder in computer science. So then I went into, after graduating in computer science, I went into tech database roles and tech support, actually. I haven't heard a lot of people that have gone into tech support and are now in business analysis. But what that really helps me do is listen to the customer, the voice of the customer, and really hear what empathize with them. So from being in computer science into then tech support, I have the ability to empathize with both engineers as well as the end customer, which I think is very important as a business analyst. So then I went into business analysis, and then through strategy analysis, the top horizon of BA, I went into business architecture. So that is where I am at now, but I still keep my analysis hat on, of course. All right, so why have you come today? What I am hoping is this session is going to help you. I'm going to explain a case study that resulted in increased efficiency. The spoiler alert, it did end in increased efficiency. That's why we're all here right now, from having the business rules elicited, defined, analyzed, and documented. So I'm going to cover with you guys the challenges that I saw without having business rules defined and elicited, documented, if you will. Maybe then the practical scope of elicitation. So you can't do it all at once. So what were the steps that I did for the scope of elicitation of these business rules? And then move into the business benefits, outcomes, key takeaways. And then, as Adrienne mentioned, I did this presentation at BBC last year, and the main question I got after it was, hey, can I have your examples of your deliverables that I'm going to talk about? So if you stay on till the end, you will also see I have provided those today for you guys to take away from as well. So my ask of you guys in this, so yes, I'm going to be talking about the case study, what happened through it, the takeaways, all of that. But every organization is different, okay? So I ask that you engage to identify areas of your organization that could benefit from having these business rules elicited and documented. So maybe my challenges are a little bit different than anything you have experienced, but see if there might be any challenges that you can relate to that you have in your organization that you can kind of apply these business rules to for benefits. So that's your homework for the next 45 minutes or so. All right, on to challenges without rules. So I'm going to go through understanding the challenges that I experienced without having these business rules defined. So let's see if any of these sound familiar to you guys. If you do have rules or requirements, I'll put that in this bucket as well. Maybe they're time-bound for an initiative and then disposed of. What do I mean by that? So if you do initiatives and you're going out and getting the rules and requirements per initiative, and it's what I call analysis or architecture archaeology. So you have to go and dig them up. It takes a lot of time and effort, but then they're not reused or transparent after the fact. Your initiative rolls out, your project rolls out, and then they're not documented to access in the future. So that is a challenge. Or if your rules or requirements are not owned by business stakeholders, this is a big one. Sometimes rules and requirements are thought of to be a tech deliverable. something that the IT department tracks and houses and is in charge of. They should be owned by the business stakeholders. So if any of these are true, then some of your challenges could be, and I'm going to go through these 4 quadrants here. So the business, what I saw for some challenges for the business was the business, think of maybe campaign management, marketing, they need program rules immediately so that they can write these campaigns, so they can communicate with internal, external stakeholders, customers, if you will, the program information. Customer service, this is front line of defense, right, for your organization. Any calls in from customers go through customer service. So they are getting in-depth questions on how or why the products or programs are working. If they don't have the rules at their fingertips or this information, it can be reported as a software bug. I saw that quite a bit. It didn't seem right. I can put that in quotes. It just didn't seem right. So it must be a bug, right? So it's going to be reported to tech as a bug. Or maybe it's not understood, of course. So it is sent to technology. And by tech, I do put in here, the business analyst. It could be the QA. It could be the developer, any of them to answer the question for them. So what this means is the customer service representative has longer, more frequent touch points for the customer service rep, as you can see. Then moving into customers, of course, customer service and customers mostly go hand in hand. So for them on their customer journey, it was really negative because they had slower turnaround times for assistance to solve their needs. So all over customer service and customers, really slow. And then tech, this does impact your tech world as well. So yes, I put business analysis, developers, QAs. You could have product owners, project managers, product managers, program managers, whatever you want in here. The time to research the program functionality, because they're getting these inquiries in from customer service, right? Their request would take them off their current project research and sprint work, which led to lower bandwidths to get new work completed. So if you guys deal with sprints, right, you have an allocated time to get an allocated set of work done that you agree upon. And then if you're always pulled off, you have a lower bandwidth, whether that be the business analyst. If you're answering the questions, you can't get a forward on story writing for the next project to come out. Developers, they're off development time, so their bandwidth goes down. QA, if they're taken off, then some of the work that may have been done in the sprint isn't releasable because it's not tested. So overall, this really has an impact on the sprint work if they are taken off to answer these questions for them. So overall, inefficiencies, frustration, slow response times across the board. All right, so hopefully in there, maybe you can relate to some of these challenges, or you can kind of think of your own that may fit in some of these buckets. So given all of that information, okay, why business rules? I just laid out some pretty big organizational challenges. What the heck made me stop and think, hey, maybe business rules can help me out with this? So spoiler, years ago, I sat in at a BBC conference, Building Business Capability Conference with Ron Ross and Gladys Lamb, and they were talking about business rules and the alignment and the promises of what business rules have and will give. And it sounded pretty good. So, okay, I'll try it. So let's go into what they promise here. And this is a really narrowed down version of the business rules in here, but the knowns. Okay, there are standards and formats, right? There is a right and a wrong way to do business rules. There is this is a business rule, this is not a business rule. So there are those standards and formats. These business rules map with other pieces of your business, such as processes, requirements, and information concepts. This pulls in both business analysis, business architecture across the board. So all of that, if you cross map, if you will, you're mapping your rules, your processes, your information concepts, which gives them definitions into your business rules, making sure the terminology in them is succinct. Those aid into the third bullet point, aid in building superior business solutions. It is hard to do, but it can be done. I'm sitting here telling you it can be done. Also, the known is elicit and analyze with the business. Again, remember one of the challenges is if the business doesn't own the business rules, if tech owns them, the business has to own them. That is a standard for business rules. After all, they are called business rules. Okay, so the unknowns. So then I'm sitting here going, I know all the knowns in here. I know my challenges. What are the unknowns? And I just put 2 points on here because they are rather large. So the specific impacts on the business, would it be positive, negative? That's a pretty big one. And by cost versus benefit analysis here, what I meant by this is the cost. There is a cost of eliciting and documenting business rules. There's a cost for everything we do. I mean, we're getting a paycheck to do our job. Anything we do is taking time, right? It's taking my time. It's taking the business people's time that they need to give me this information. Would that cost be worth the benefit? What is the benefit? That's why we're here today. So that was kind of the unknown for me is this worth it? Is this going to solve my challenges? So at this point, when I knew what business rules were, I knew we had challenges, we were kicking off in this case study, we were kicking off a rather large initiative. So I was thinking, well, there's unknowns. I have to elicit these requirements with the business anyway. So why not go ahead and start eliciting these business rules also and just see what comes of it? So I did this within a scope of one initiative. So the change strategy. Okay, we know what the output is. The output is having documented business rules. I didn't know the outcome yet, of course. But how do we document these business rules? What I will tell you all is it does not happen overnight. This is not a quick, easy fix. You have to have patience. It does take time. So I want to go into this change strategy with you guys and kind of help you see the practical steps that I took for a scope of documenting these business rules when none existed. So again, that's kind of my current state, right? I don't have any business rules defined yet, documented, elicited. People knew it in their heads. That's tribal knowledge, but nothing was documented. And then the other scope was I was running one rather large initiative. So that's where we were. So what did I do? So the practical steps and scope here. The scope. I will say start small for your initiatives. In here, I talk to technology. I talk to business stakeholders in here, referencing the rules and requirements to gain that consensus, documented the knowns. So this was the current state. This was really interesting. Through this conversation, I was able to take through with tech, talking with even tech, right? Okay, this program was already out there in the world. It was an overhaul is what this initiative was, complete redo of a program. So I was able to talk to technology first and say, what is it doing now? And document that, then talk with the business, the program managers and say, okay, give me the business rules and requirements that is for this program. And I will be honest, during this case study, I did find the current state of what the business thought the program should be doing and what it was actually doing in the technology area was not the same. Mainly, yes, but there were some minute points that were not the same. So that led to really, really good conversations with eliciting this to say, hey, do you know there's kind of a gap here? And how do we want to move forward? So that was kind of fun for the scope and critical conversations, which pulls me into there. Make sure in the critical conversations to be focused on the business. One of the business role conversation, if your organization is in the mindset, if you will, the business roles and requirements are owned by technology, then what you will hear quite a bit is, well, I don't know what it should do. Go ask, what can the program do for me? And I encourage you to kindly push back on that and say, no, what does the business want it to do? You own these business rules. Technology enables you, and we can have these conversations, but the business owns it. You own it. Give them the power. You will be their new best friend. I promise you. So have these critical conversations with them, just enough, just in time. Also, feedback sessions were amazingly important on creating that awareness in the business. So let me explain that a little bit more. What do I mean by feedback sessions? So the feedback sessions that I had here where I would do sprint reviews. So if you do sprint, if you're doing 2, 3, 1 week, month, I don't know what kind of sprints, everybody's doing, but at the end, if you have a deliverable, then you should, you can pull in those business stakeholders to show them, to get their feedback ahead of deployment, right? This is what we did. This was the feedback we had. So in those feedback sessions, I would get asked questions because I would pull in other business program owners as well. So maybe the program manager was in there, but marketing was in on the sprint review as well, just to gain some knowledge because they're going to have campaigns to put out about this. So they were in, and anybody could ask questions. So if I got a question on a business rule, they didn't know it was a business rule, right? You know it by the question. Question came in, I would actually point them to the business rule rulebook. That is a great question. Here, let's go research this. And we have a rule book now. Let's pull this up. Yes, I knew the answer. Yes, I could have just answered their question, but I showed them what we were starting. And so they now know they can go look there anytime as well. So it's creating that awareness as you go through those feedback sessions so they can see how you're answering their questions. Very, very handy. And then rule book rules in here. I'm going to touch on this one a couple points, but let me just go into some more information on the one rule book. So when you do these feedback sessions, you may hear, and I did, that's why I'm kind of giving you guys this information, marketing or another department, right, might say, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to go create my own rule book, or can you help us create our rule book for our programs in here? And you want to be careful with that. What I would say is there's one business rule book for your organization. And I understand some are different sized, but this is just, my feedback here. Reasoning is, if you have multiple rule books for your organization, you have a high probability that there will be redundancy and inconsistencies in them. So train them on why, instead of just saying, nope, we're going to put it all in one. Say, if marketing is keeping track of program rules in theirs, and then the program actual team is keeping track of the program business rules in theirs, well, then the program managers want to update it, but marketing doesn't update theirs, then there's a redundancy. And as soon as it gets outdated, people start using it. You are not going to have the benefits anymore. So it's kind of really important to have one rule book. Also created a summary of best practices. I will go into this a little bit in depth in a minute. And then setting ownership and security. This is really important. Again, if you can think of the one rule book, okay? Setting ownership and security for the rule book. You don't want everybody to have access to edit this rule book. Reasoning is, you need to have analysis done as soon as they want to change a rule. Because remember those mappings that we talked about at the beginning? The business rules can be mapped to processes, to requirements, to information concept, all these different things. You need to have somebody with analysis mindset in charge of this business rule book, so they can say, okay, I'm hearing that this business rule needs to get updated. Okay, what is the impact of that? Is there anything? Is this just a business rule that's for informational internal purposes? Okay, go ahead and update it. Maybe we need to do internal training on it or something. Others may have a high impact on technology. We can't just change this rule because we're going to have to go and elicit all these requirements that are aligned and get it on the roadmap. Where does this fit in capacity? All that wonderful stuff. So make sure you have ownership and security and training as well. I do want to throw in a disclaimer here that at the beginning of this use case, my time was limited, and this was the first time I've done it. Yes, I'd gone through training, but it was very fast moving. So I want to put in a reality check here, if I will, to you guys. I did not follow the best practices for business rules when I was first documenting this at this stage in the game. I didn't have time to, nor did I know if any of these benefits, if the cost versus benefit ratio was good, that this is something we wanted to do in the future. Now, what I will say is that I made sure that these business rules were accurate. Some had requirements mixed in with rules, whatnot. They were transparent. It was this rule book was in a Word document, shared transparently overall, locked down, of course, but people could access it, they could search in it, and it was accurate. That was very, very important. But I'm going to circle back to this on what I did with this reality check a little bit later. But I like to be honest with people. So that's my honesty. Benefits and outcomes. Okay, so given the challenges that we had, and also the completing the steps, the practical steps that we went through, what were the benefits that came out of it? So current state right now. So if I can kind of bring you to where I was at this point in the game, the initiative was deployed. So we'd gone through the program. It was deployed. It was out there for at least a couple months. Now, what I did from here was I completed a survey. And any analysis, right? We do these feedback sessions. We do retrospectives. This was just one that I plan to do around business rules to figure out the cost versus benefit ratio, right? See if it was worth it. So had the business rules documented. They were bullet point format. It wasn't gorgeous or pretty. It was transparent to the business. The program was out there. People knew to go use it because I created that awareness as well. So people were hopefully using it. So I sent out a survey to figure out those unknowns. So the benefits uncovered in here, touching a little bit even on the business architecture piece. This one was really interesting to me, and I did not expect this. This was unexpected to me. But having the business rules in this scenario here, one example I can share with you guys is that, for example, you have partner management, right? You have partners and vendors that your organization works with. So there was a partner that wanted to work with the organization, and it did impact the program that we had just documented the business rules on. So what we did was I was able to say, okay, here is the proposal that the partner wanted to come at and how they wanted to work with the organization. I had the business rules for this program as well. So I was able to compare the two and say, okay, does it match? Okay, if it does, great. If not, is the partner willing to budge? If not, is the business, if our organization willing to change some of their business rules to accommodate this partner proposal? And in the end, I will tell you, it was made apparent right away that we would have had data inefficiencies and a loss of data integrity had we gone forward. And we were able to see that because of those business rules being transparent and readily accessible for what the business says. This is our data rules for this program. And they were all documented. So that helped down the road. If you do get in a partnership and down the road you figure out, oh, I wish we would have known that would have happened, and then it's pretty bad, right? So ability to compare those proposals was very, very beneficial for the business architecture. The business benefits. As I said, you might become their new best friend. If you go to the business and elicit and validate these business rules with them, and they learn that they have ownership, they have a say in how and why certain things get done, that's really going to open their eyes. It's going to build trust. You're going to be a trusted advisor. It's just good all the way around. Also, what I was saying, remember the challenge for the business is that the business needs information immediately in order to develop their campaigns on an as-needed basis for these programs. And that was archaeology in the past, if you think about it. So the benefit here that I found from these business people was that communication on Teams, they could find what was needed immediately and needed to write the content from. So their efficiencies grew a lot in being able to find this content and this information. Moving into customer service. This one, remember the challenge was the in-depth questions would be reported as a bug if they didn't seem right, or they would be sent to tech to research. The benefit in here from customer service is that in-depth questions could be researched on the initial call with no further escalation needed. Now, some, yes, still did go to tech, but most, I would say, I think from my feedback, it was like at least 80% were now, and that's huge, right? They were now answered on the first call instead of going into technology to answer this question. The customers, remember, they had a slower turnaround for assistance to solve their needs. Benefits here were inquiries have a faster response time. Another unexpected benefit that I was not expecting was, and they had even further training. So this kind of flipped it to not only are they getting their questions answered. So if you think about your customer journey, right? The customer service, it didn't just turn from a negative, a little frowny face in their customer journey to kind of neutral. Okay, yeah, I got my question answered. I'm going to go on. It moved to a positive because now that the customer service reps were not spending so much time answering the questions and phone calls and getting back to people back and forth, they had time to say, we're hearing a lot of these questions from phone calls coming in. So let's analyze this. Now, this is in the business rules. So we just need to put out training. Maybe that would help. So they were able to put together training to put that outward towards external customers as well, which really, really, really helped. Technology. Okay. And this, again, I'm not just saying developers. When I say of tech, I'm thinking delivery BAs, QAs, all of that sort of stuff. Product owners as well. Very, very good feedback. So their time was taken off the current work to research, right? Now their feedback was escalations had decreased and are contained to actual issues that led to fixes and enhancements. So if you're thinking the pieces of information that they are being asked, a lot of them then were going, oh yeah, we are still getting a lot of phone calls on this, but maybe now as a business analyst, you go, okay, I need to talk to the business on this because I know it's in our business rules. Yes, customer service has probably done some training outward, but for whatever reason, we still have a friction point here. So is there something we can do differently to make a change? Like these are all good things for the business, right? Going forward for enhancements. So that is where their time was able to be taken. Okay. So in summary of these survey results here, 100% satisfaction in the business rules being documented. And I wouldn't even say 99.9%. I did not get one negative piece of the survey back and saying, no, it wasn't worth my time. No, I didn't really want to go research it. Yeah, 100% satisfaction. And remember, my survey, I did not just survey IT people. This was not just, hey, our developers, our BAs, you can go, or even the program managers, right, of the area that we had. I surveyed the rest of the business also. So down from operations to marketing, to finance was impacted on this as well. So I surveyed everybody to say, okay, positive or negative. So across the board, not just in the program or tech, satisfaction. Okay, so increase in work efficiency. What do I mean by this? And the reason I want to explain this, some people say increase in efficiency, and it just sounds good, but I want to explain what the heck I mean. So what I mean is output to total input. Think of that archaeology again. As a BA, as a customer service rep, enter the title, your total input that you need to go and dig up the information that you have to have in order to provide that output, say answer to a campaign manager, answer to an external customer, right? How much time does it take you and energy to get that information in order to provide it out? That's the deciding factor, the division, if you will, output to total input. So there was a lot of increase in work efficiency. It did not take as long to get the information that it was to provide. Okay, so we saw that. Increase in customer service satisfaction. And this is internal and external. So I'm putting customer service, right? Internal, yes, there was an increase there, but also our customer journey overall. They also had an increase in satisfaction. So very, very good results here. Okay, so I decided now, right, that survey results are really positive. So this is something we should go forward with. So on here now, I want to give you some key takeaways, given the challenges, the practical scope, the steps to take, and then, giving you the outcomes, that the benefits that I experienced in this use case here. So I want to first touch on that disclaimer that I said. Remember before I said I was really lazy? Okay, no, it wasn't lazy. I just didn't have time. But at least I did document all the rules. They were accurate, whatnot. When then I had the benefits, I knew this was something we wanted to use going forward, very beneficial. And I had an increased bandwidth. Then I went back and I researched more of the best format practices to create this summary that I'm going to tell you guys more about, and references, and then train the owners. So there was this set that I did after the fact, got it into a better format in here. Okay. So these pieces here, I know I already I already discussed, having one searchable, transparent rule book. It is important to say it again in here. One searchable, transparent rule book. One thing that I also say on here is a term, it's probably in analysis as well, but business architecture, we have a thing on capabilities that they're MECE. They're mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So I would really actually tell you to have your rule book follow those MECE, MECE rules to make sure that they cover all of your organization when you can. I know you may have to break it down for scope to get it going, but make sure it covers the breadth of your organization. But then there's no redundancy is basically what that is saying. Make sure you analyze them to make sure there's no overlap or contradictions. So you do have to make sure that having that one searchable, transparent rule book does help you with that MECE. Again, if anybody's asking, MECE again is mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So very, very useful. Ongoing maintenance through analysis and tracking your changes. This is very important because I think a lot of us already know that as soon as something gets out of date, then people stop using it. So clearly we found this is very beneficial to have. So we need to maintain it. So the scope that I did, even in this one initiative, it took over a year, right? I documented this in little pieces and built upon it. And even as I was building, even in one initiative, one program, I would go, okay, this rule or these bucket of rules came in. Let's analyze these from the ones that I already have. Are there any contradictions, overlap, yada, yada, and then build upon it. So even within your first initiative, let alone as you're moving forward, make sure you're doing that analysis and tracking those changes. And I will actually show you in a little bit how I track changes in the rule book to help. Maybe it will stem some thoughts for you guys. Start small and continue growth per initiative program. That was in the scope, of course. You can't boil the ocean all at once. You can't eat an elephant in one bite. You know, all these other analogies in here, something huge. And oh my gosh, there's so many rules for our organization. Where am I going to start? Just start small, start somewhere, and then keep growing. Continue training and collaboration among the rulebook owners. This one was interesting. So after I got to this point afterwards and I was getting it in the right format, I had a set of rulebook owners. So it can't just be on one person unless you have a smaller organization. There's multiple analysts or architects or whatnot working on this, but it should be somebody with an analyst brain that can go do the impact analysis, if you will. But train them and have that collaboration between them. Something that helped me was I set up a COP, a community practice with the rulebook owners. And we met. It depends on how fast you're changing rules. I set it up monthly initially. And it was just really nice to say, okay, I'm working with this program or this business unit here. This other rulebook owner is working over here. Oh, well, we might have some overlap. So let's make sure that we have a touch point along the way here because they may overlap or maybe there's none. So you're fine. But at least you have that collaborative environment that you guys are all working together to build out that rulebook. Building awareness company-wide. So again, as I mentioned, feedback sessions were very beneficial to create that initial and ongoing awareness company-wide. Also, I did a survey and I love you all, and I'm so happy that I was able to share this with you guys, and hopefully you can benefit from it. But also, this is helpful for your organization. If you do a survey, if you have this feedback of, look at what our organization has benefited from, present that to your business. One, it's a feather in your cap. Hey, good work. People pat you on the back. But also, others that have not dealt with the rule book yet will go, oh, I want that too. That sounds really interesting. They're getting these benefits from it. Sign me up. Come talk to me next. So I really challenge you, once you get something, you get this feedback or whatnot, share it. Share your success, track your wins with your organization. And then creating a summary and format of best practices. This was very helpful for even the rule book owners, because you're not going to be working in this rule book day in and day out unless your company is large enough and you have a rule book owner as your title. Usually you're going to be wearing multiple hats. So to know the best format and practices for writing rule books, it is handy to have that short summary to go back to, going, okay, now I need to go update or write these rules. What is the best format? Because like I said, Ron Ross has said how you should be doing these. So I'm going to actually share that with you now. These, I call them bonus. Yep. So I did grab these. I did not write. I'm breaking out these next slides. There is a lot of information on these slides. Adrian, I'm hoping, we'll be able to talk afterwards. People can access the slides. This is going to be recorded, so don't worry about that. But there's a lot of information on these next few slides. But what I did was I took my 2-page document that I created, my summary and best practices and format, okay, that myself and the other owners, the rulebook owners, could use whenever we need it. So there's a couple different sections on there that I'm going to show you. Just letting you know, I did not write these. I pulled these from resources from Ron Ross and books and webinars and presentations and a whole bunch of different areas, and pulled them together for what I felt was beneficial. I'm going to put the resources on here. You can go find it if you want to dig in on any more of this information. I did also ask permission from Ron Ross to share this with you guys, and he graciously agreed. So I just need to give him all the credit here, just so you guys know. But with that, I'm going to jump in. The first part of my summary 2-page document is I clearly stated what is a business rule, what is a business requirement, and what is a definition. And you may think of, well, you should know what a business rule and a requirement is. You guys may be so much smarter than I am, but I'm just going to be honest with you guys and say, here's my honesty again. It's hard when you're talking to the business and they're just giving you information left and right, and you're documenting it as you should for your user stories and the work and all this. What is a business rule versus what is a requirement? So the business rule, shapes the why. It is the high level definitions and behavioral rules, as they say on here, of why you do what you do. Now then the requirements, they change more frequently than business rules. Business rules usually don't change that often, okay? So if you think of the guardrails of, yeah, we can do a lot in here, maybe a percentage if you have like discounts or percentage, or rules of when you have blackout rates, or, whatever it may be, the specific time frames, those may change more frequently. So those would be requirements. Whereas, hey, we're going to have a blackout rule. Hey, we're going to have a rewards program that allows this or these time frames. So the business rules are the higher why, guardrails. Then the requirements can go into, okay, how? What are the specifics? And again, if you can align them right off the bat when you go through them, even better. So this kind of helps just going back to, as you go back and you remember, okay, I'm writing this. Is this a rule or is this a requirement? Having this at your fingertips is really helpful. Business rules, best practices. I'm not going to read through all of these. Again, you'll have access to this, but this really kind of brought me back to, if I hadn't been in the business rule book for a month, for example, then I would come back and say, okay, yeah, this should or should not contain this. It's not an either or. So these just kind of do not start with if, this isn't coding. It's not an if then else statement. It's a business rule. So this was just, again, something that really kind of level set it. Now, the third slide in here, this is the one I use the most personally for me, because I would just be talking to the business and writing stuff down, right? Just, okay, this is what it should be. But now before I go in and I document this for end practice in the business rule book, I want to make sure it's in the correct format. So this really helps me going, okay, if I hear one that the customer has to blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm going to run through this. Is it a must? Is it a must not? Oh, there's a may only. Like, you can kind of go through this and say, okay, what is the format that this should be in to write it? So this was very, very helpful for me. Hopefully this will help you guys as well. And then the last one is my template. Some people asked for my template as well. Now, this, again, I left it in Word document, shared on like SharePoint sites with security set. Some of you may use Confluence. I mean, there could be a whole bunch of different areas your business would like to track these on. I just try to keep it simple, especially starting off. As it grows, maybe your organization wants to change or move out. But some important pieces that I want to call out that were really important to our organization was the ownership. You're going to see right underneath the rule book title is ownership. And I would put the names of the analysts or architects or whoever in here was an owner of this rule book. The reason why is because, remember the edit permissions. Not everybody could edit, rightfully so. So if I'm a program manager and I come in and look at this rule book and I say, oh, no, that one's not right, or we need to update this. Right away at the top, they can say, who do I need to contact to discuss this. So very important, put your ownership at the top or somewhere really easily accessible in here. Of course, table of contents, it's going to grow pretty large. The program rules, you can break it down however you guys want. I'm just kind of showing you how I did it, but please feel free to, make it your own. One piece I do want to call out in here is, and hopefully, it may not follow the Ron Ross rules for the rule book, but you're going to see in the middle of the page, I have a bold requirements bullet point. Now, the reason that I did this was because, remember at the beginning, I said I put all this information together and I wasn't sure if it was a rule, if it was a requirement, until later I came back and cleaned it up and made it, in the correct format and way to go about it. Some of them were rules and some were requirements. That was a decision I made at the time to say, if I already documented the requirements that are aligned to the business rule that it maps to, I'm going to keep it here. Then people could read it. I had all that information in one spot. Now, some people also may have requirements tools for traceability and whatnot. So I understand that. I did not have that. So I just wanted to put that little caveat in here that yes, I have requirements listed here, but you don't have to on the rule book, of course. And then at the bottom, the last point is the update history. So there's revision section, what was changed in the author. This is where it's important to track your changes. And the reasoning is, say a program manager or marketing would be a great one, right? Campaign management. We're getting ready to put out a campaign. They're going and saying, oh, well, I was going to reuse this campaign that we did last year, but it's not matching these business rules. When the heck did that change? Then you can look down in your update history and say, yep, the program manager, say who, of course, I would say as well. We updated it to be this on such and such date, and this is why. So you have that revision history there, instead of people just thinking, oh, that should have never changed. No, it did here. So those are the big important points I would call out on the template. But again, please feel free to use any of this that you may find beneficial or change whatever would work for you. This is just something I threw together on my own. All right. And with that, Adrian, I believe that is it. I will leave you next to a campfire in Glacier National Park if there's any questions.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, Breanne, that was just amazing and so much insight. And interestingly, we do have lots of questions, but I do have a bit of a surprise. So I'm just going to share my screen just for a moment, and I have been typing away as you've been talking. And so are you happy for me to also share a mind map with a few screenshots in as part of the the output from this session, Breanne?
That would be awesome.
Great. So yeah, so so much insight there. So I will stop sharing just for a moment, and we have loads of questions. The first question is asked anonymously. And the person asks, how do you deal with colleagues or teams or business stakeholders that do not know what the business rules are, and or don't know what they need them to be? Which is, I know you kind of addressed that sometimes people try and get tech to answer that question, but how do you deal with that?
That is a great question. And it's something that I learned when I went into architecture, right? Is when you are trying to teach people or get information out of them on what are your capabilities and all of this stuff, you don't talk about architecture, right? I would say this business rules format is the same thing. You don't have to go in and say, what are your business rules? What is a business rule? I mean, clearly I didn't even know specifically right off the bat, right? That I had that summary. You just create that conversation with them, like you're eliciting requirements, you're eliciting anything. Sit down with them and say, what do you need this to do? What is important for the business? What shouldn't happen? What should happen? And then when you go back and start to document it, then you'll know go through that summary and go, this is a rule, this is a requirement. So I don't think you have to in those sessions go, oh, I don't want to hear your requirements right now. I'm only here for your business rules. That's on us to go back and figure out.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Excellent. And Michelle asks, did you come across any colleagues who pushed back because they perceived, oh, I love this question. Did you come across any colleagues who pushed back because they perceived that nothing is written down in Agile?
No,
Oh,
I
wow.
I did. Okay, well, let me caveat that a little bit, because the only small pushback that I got was actually not by the business. It was in tech, which is really weird, right? So, but then that's a whole nother presentation as well, that I could say, it's not the documentation, but it's the mapping that makes you more agile when you have that cross mapping, especially business rules. When you get into business architecture, oh my goodness, rules-based routing, it can help you so much across the board. So if they don't want to call it quote unquote documentation, but as soon as you start overlapping and cross mapping business rules with other domains or pieces of information, that's where you really get the benefit out of it.
Yeah, for sure. As you were speaking there, I was thinking actually a key part of business agility. If you've got a proper information concepts mapped, and if you've got a proper repository of business rules, then actually you've got the ability to move much faster. So distinguishing agile as a delivery mechanism, I mean, and that's really important, but the ability to actually pivot and move quickly. If you've got a central repository of business rules, you're in a really good place to make quick changes.
Yeah,
Um,
because you're not doing that archaeology anymore, right?
yeah, yeah,
You're going
yeah.
to look at it, but not digging it out of people's heads. So yeah, I agree with you. It does make you more agile.
Fantastic. We have a question from Bina who asks whether business rules are also the strategy of the business. And I'm gonna slightly change the phrasing of that question to springboard from it. Um, how are business rules related to, or are business rules related to the strategy of an organization, would you say?
I guess my thought on it is I would relate a lot of other things to strategy, like your OKRs and there's a bunch of different things, right? Um, and that's where you want to go. The business rules are really the guardrails that help you enable that. So I guess that would be my feedback, is I don't think that they're related. I think it comes in when you start doing the analysis of, okay, now we need to execute on our strategy. Now I'm going and doing the analysis on it and how.
Yeah, that's how it's interesting because when I saw that question, I had that whole, that's an interesting question. And
Yeah.
where my head went was, I've always seen them as linked to like policy, not like, and policy is kind of has a dotted line into strategy, but actually you tend to decompose policy down into rules. So maybe that's the triangulation, but it's
I would
an
agree
interesting
with you.
question.
Hmm.
Ron Ross would have an answer to that. It's a shame Ron
I
isn't
know.
on the session today, but um, Tahir asks another really good question, which is: would you store business rules in a central repository, and how would you manage versioning for any changes made by others? I know you mentioned you were using Word, but I mean there are other repositories out there.
Yeah, it's whatever you have accessible in your organization. But the versioning history, that would be, for mine, since it was just starting off, I used that table on the bottom. If you kind of saw that at the very end, the very last slide. But yeah, whatever really works for you. Every organization is different. So just pick something I think the important part to that is make sure you can set security,
Mm.
right? You don't want everybody in there being able to edit it. So use your repository based on that you can actually set security, would be the one thing that I would recommend.
Fantastic. We've probably got time for just another question or two. So Sandeep asks, Sandeep says that I tried to define business rules. They quickly turned into coding parameters, and there was a push to define the data attributes and data sources that I was trying to define as a business rule. Would
Mhm.
you put the data with the business rules?
I wouldn't. And the reason that I say no is because they are aligned. So I'm not saying don't throw it out or don't get it. I think any information you can get when you're speaking to tech or a business, get it, right? But a business rule is a business rule, and data, information, concepts, they're their own attribute, if you will, and they should align to each other, but they are not all in your business rule book. They are their own entities, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Another quick question that's probably quite difficult to answer actually, but Robbie asks in the chat, is there a good format for business rule statements?
Yep, I would reference the second to last slide, I believe, that I had the uh, format on there of it actually goes out and has the information on must and must not and may and or. So I would use that. And like I said, I use that all the time to go back and just verify, am I writing this business rule correctly per that format? So I would reuse that slide, Adrian, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. And probably just time for just one more quick question. I'm just looking for one. A nice quick one, I think, from Rushma. How often should the business rules rulebook be reviewed?
All the time. So
Yeah, yeah.
anytime, if every day, no, I'm just kidding. I think that is dependent on your type of initiatives that you're doing, right? If they're major enhancements to a program, of course you want to review that. That's in your analysis anyway, is to go and say, okay, we have this initiative on this program. If I already have the business rules documented, let me go verify that we're still following those, that the requirements align to those, what we have to change. Oh, it's going to change a business rule. I better go talk to that business rule owner and say, do we know that we're changing this rule? Was that identified? Have those tough conversations. So use it, update it if needed. So I think that's really up to what initiatives do you have running. Make sure you're always reviewing it.
And that, Brianne, I think is a great point at which to conclude the webinar because who doesn't love an answer which is basically it depends because that's the get out answer to every question in the world. So there's lots of really nice comments coming in the chat. Brianne, thank you so much. I'm really pleased that you took the time out today to present this. To those of you who are on the webinar live, do check the chat. You'll see in the chat I've put a link to Brianne's LinkedIn profile. So if you want to connect with Brianne, LinkedIn is always a good way. And I mean, anything else you want to plug or mention before we close, Brianne?
No, just feel free if you guys have any questions or just want to reach out. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Any of my future presentations I do have planned, but I'll put that on LinkedIn as well. So hopefully we can connect there and keep the conversation going.